Welcome back, folks, for a leak speculation video on the change for the Tier 10 British heavy tank from the FV215B into the FV4201 Chieftain. Now, this change should coincide with the changes to the FV4202 into the Action X Centurion, and will likely happen around February/March of 2015, so likely patch 9.7. I doubt it will be 9.6, so 9.7 will be the latest. But here's the video about the Chieftain. Now, the Chieftain was designed to have the firepower of a Conqueror while having the mobility of a Centurion. And I always thought this tank was big, like the Conqueror, but here's a size comparison. So as you can see, the Conqueror is on the left, the Centurion is in the middle, and here's the Chieftain. The Chieftain is a pretty small tank. It's a pretty small tank in comparison to the Centurion, and Centurion's not that big, but still, it's likely the size of a T54 or T62, so it's not a big tank, and it's pretty well armored. Now, the Chieftain is designated as a main battle tank. It's not a heavy tank, so I don't know if the switch will be the same as the changes like a T54E1 to a T57 heavy. So I don't know if you're going to switch between a heavy tank to a medium, or it's going to be classified as a heavy, so that's going to be weird. But it's not a big tank, so that's quite insane. So let's go over the armor of this tank. And this tank has a lot of armor at the front, but side armor and rear armor is kind of crap. So alright, and I have a spreadsheet as always. So basically we have the FV215B on the left and the FV4201 Chieftain on the right. So as you can see, the frontal hull armor on the FV215B is 152mm slope at 60 degrees, so 250mm effective. Whereas on the Chieftain, it's 120mm slope at 72 degrees, so it's about 388mm effective. That's nuts. That is pretty good. Now, side armor is 102mm above the tracks, 51mm below with 5mm of space armor covering, and 25mm of tracks. Whereas on the Chieftain, armor is not that good. 50mm at the sides above the tracks at 30 degrees, so that's about 65mm. 38mm below the tracks, so yeah, side armor is not great. So this thing is more like a medium tank. A lot like a medium tank, alright? Rear of the hull is 76mm on the FV215B. And on the Chieftain, it's about 32mm. So yeah, it has no rear armor, no side armor. And you cannot side scrape with this thing as well. But it has a lot of frontal hull armor. And lower plate should be as well as armored as the upper plate. So that's pretty nuts, alright? And for the turret, it has the FV215B has 254mm underneath the mantlet, 229mm at 45 degrees, and 203mm at 60 degrees. So it's about auto bounce to 300mm effective. Whereas on the Chieftain, it's 195mm slope at 60 degrees. So that's almost 400mm of effective armor. Now, the Chieftain does not get a mantlet, so you might be able to hesh or high explosive the turret, but still, that's pretty damn tough of a turret. That's crazy. Side of the turret on the 215B is 152mm, slope at 30 degrees, so 170mm effective. Side of the turret on the Chieftain is 120mm, slope at 25 degrees, so 132mm. So side of the turret is not that great on the Chieftain, as well as the rear of the turret. So for the 215B, it's 102mm at the rear, so 103mm effective. Whereas on the Chieftain, it's about 35mm. So armor wise, the Chieftain has a lot of frontal armor on the turret as well as on the hull, but side armor is kind of crap, and rear armor is also crap. But it's main battle tank, it's not heavy tank, so I doubt you will side scrape it with it, so it's not a good idea. But it's a small target, it's not as big as the FV215B, it's not as big as a Centurion, that's for damn sure. But armor wise, it has a lot of frontal armor, so I think this thing might be even better than the Russian medium tanks. So that's pretty crazy. Now here's a comparison between the size within the game. Where is the gun barrel? Where is the gun barrel? But this is the old model of the FV4201 Chieftain, and it's a pretty goddamn good looking tank in my opinion. Now as you can see, it's a small tank, it's not that big. And here's the Centurion, so you can compare the size. So Centurion, kind of big, and here is the FV4201 Chieftain. So it's a small tank, it's not that big. I wonder how big is it in comparison to the stuff like the Sherman. Oh yeah, Sherman's taller, obviously. So it's a pretty small tank. Low profile means it has very good camera rating. Now let's compare it with some Russian or some sort of Russian deviant like the WZ. So it's barely bigger than the WZ-120, which is basically a Type 59. So it's a small tank with good armor at the front, and it's pretty goddamn amazing looking too. So it has no side armor, no rear armor, but frontal armor is very decent. Sloped frontal armor is really well sloped. Lower glacis is decent, so I presume that's at least 100 millimeters. So still well sloped, but frontal hull armor is very, very decent. Egg shaped too, so it might bounce a few shots. Now turret does have a few weak spots, I can see. So there might be a less well sloped cheek right here, but alright. And you can also shoot at the cupola, so these are probably the big weakness on the turret. But side of the turret is kind of crap, as well as the rear of the turret. So the rest of this tank is boxy, but the frontal armor is really well sloped, so not that many weak spots on the turret, so it seems, other than this little cheek right here. This will automatically bounce, I presume. It's pretty well sloped. So weak spots are this cupola, but that's a kind of small target, and this little cheek right here, the little nose cheek, but yeah, it's a small target. And this thing is small, so it's more like a medium tank. So none of that British heavy tank crap. So yeah, nope. So it's a small tank, but it's a pretty goddamn good looking tank too. So this might be the best medium tank at tier 10. Might be. It's not even a medium tank, it's a heavy tank. So let's look at the other stats, possible other stats for this tank. And here are the speculations for the stats on the Chieftain. Now remember, these stats are not final, these are only speculative based on the historical configuration of this tank. So don't go overhyped, don't go apeshit on me, alright? These are all speculative. So it has a crew of 4, a commander, a gunner, a loader, and a driver. It weighs 55 tons, so it has a 750 horsepower engine, which gives it 13.6 power to weight ratio. Now if it's going to get tweaked with a 950 horsepower engine, it will get 17.27 horsepower per ton ratio, which is pretty good. Top speed is 48 kilometers per hour, which is very good in comparison to 34.3 on the 215B. So alright, it's a lot smaller than the 215B, obviously. It carries a L11A5 120mm Royal Ordnance gun, so it's a little bit better than the L1A1, obviously, because it is used on the Challenger Mark 1. So alright, but damage and penetration, that's going to get tweaked normally based on developers and their balancing of the tank. But it does fire 8 rounds per minute historically, in comparison to 17.19 rounds per minute. So penetration should be around 250 to 270 millimeters, so based on developers obviously, but damage should be the same as 400 damage per hit. So given a rate of 8 rounds per minute and 400 damage per shot, so DPM is very good, 3200, so that's pretty nice. It should have a better accuracy than the L1A1, so it should have about 0.3 accuracy, it should do have about 1.6 second aim time, Alright. Gun depression is a lot better on the Chieftain than the 215B because it has 10 degrees gun depression compared to 7. Gun elevation should be the same at 20 degrees. View range should be a little bit better than 410 meters, maybe 420, but 410 is very good. Signal range is standard, 750 meters plus, it's alright. Now, based on size and horsepower per ton, so the Chieftain is more like a WZ120. So it has should have about 0.75 for hard terrain resistance, 0.86 for medium, and 1.73 for soft, based on the stats on the WZ120. Now the T54 has surprisingly bad terrain resistance, so I'm not gonna consider that. But in comparison to the 215B, it is smaller, it weighs less, so I think it should have a better power to weight ratio as well as terrain resistance. So mobility wise, the Chieftain should be like a medium tank, like a very powerful medium with very good frontal armor. Now, if it is a medium tank, it's probably one of the best medium tanks in the game in comparison to the likes of the T62A or Object 140 and stuff like that. So the gun is very powerful. It has a very good DPM. It has very good frontal armor. It's pretty goddamn OP. So, So in conclusion, the FV4201 Chieftain will be one of the most popular tanks in the game because it has the penetration, it has the damage, it has the mobility, it has the turret armor and frontal hull armor, and the gun depression and elevation, as well as the small size. So what's the weak spot on this tank other than the side armor? But you don't really rely on side armor that much, do you? So I don't see the weak spot on this tank. It has the frontal armor, it has the mobility, it has the guns. I don't see the weak spot. So it will be one of the most popular tanks in the game. Now, thank you guys for watching this video, and these stats are only speculative, so don't get your hopes up, but based on historical accuracy and configuration of the Chieftain, oh man, it's going to be one of the most popular tanks in the game. Now the grind to it is going to be rough because I hate the Churchills. Ugh, I hate them. I hate the Black Prince as well because the gun is not that damaging and penetrative, and there's a weak spot on the sponsons that's jutting out next to the tracks. Basically, if you shoot at the tracks of the Black Prince as well as the Churchills, you'll damage the hull because there are sponsons covering the tracks as well. So yeah, the Churchills are not great, but this tank, ooh, it's worth it in my opinion if you're gonna have all these stats. So thank you guys for watching this video, and comment below or leave your opinion about the Chieftain. But in my opinion, it's going to be one of the most OP medium tanks at tier 10, even though it's a heavy, I guess. So alright, but thank you guys for watching this video. Rate this video if you can, that always help me out a lot. Subscribe to my channel for more war tank stuff, but I'll see you guys next time. Peace.